Thank you everybody for being here. Can you hear me? Yes? Hopefully my southern accent is not too strong for you. It takes about 6 slides to get used to it. So the first few slides are just random words, so you can get acclimatized to my accent. So tonight we're going to talk about sharks in general, in the first part, and then about my blue shark project. It's been 3 years now that I've carried it out. So first of all, when we talk about sharks, it's just the title, but that's okay. When we talk about sharks, we're using just one word, but in reality, we are referring to more than 500 different species, okay? These species are completely different in terms of size, in terms of biology, in terms of feeding behavior. Some of them are the scary ones that you don't want to see in the water. Some of them are the cute ones, if you are a marine biologist. But just within the 500 species, about 12 are considered to be dangerous for humans, okay? So these are the two extremes. So the smallest shark is considered to be the Pygmy Shark. It has bioluminescence, so it glows in the dark. It's a deep sea fish. Still a small predator. And then we have the biggest fish in the planet, which is the whale shark. Unfortunately, we don't have it here, so you have to travel to the Maldives to see it, probably. But that's just to give you a range of the possibilities in terms of size when you talk about sharks. We know that we were talking about sharks, so that's normally what people think when they hear the word shark. Shark, Jaws, killing machine. So we are referring to this animal going around in the ocean looking for humans and just ready to bite. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning of the negative perception of sharks in the general public. So in 1975, Jaws was launched. Did you see the movie? Is someone suffering from, some scary feeling after the movie or something? So after the movie, it has been estimated that thousands of sharks have been killed just along the eastern coast of the US. About 50% of the big sharks have been killed in just a few years after the release of the movie. So that's the power of just one movie. But as we said, this was just the beginning. Till now, I've counted roughly 80 movies that deal with killing sharks. One of them, I think it's this one. Well, you got sharks falling down from the outer space, killing humans. So I don't really know how to comment on that. But yes, they work, because if you can imagine 80 movies, and in each one of them you have quite a huge public, it's a constant message of terror that we're passing to people about sharks. And it's not just the images that are used, but also the music and the whole setting. In this paper, they invited the public to be divided in 2 groups, and they were watching the same documentary, one with an uplifting music and the other one with an ominous music. At the end, they asked people to complete a questionnaire about their perception of sharks. And there was a massive difference between the 2 groups because of the music that they put in the background. So you can imagine in a movie where you have the photographs, the images, the actors, the music, lights, and everything. Even if we don't realize it, we are taking in all this fear for the animals. Movies are just one part of the problem, unfortunately. We also have the press that doesn't help, okay? So this is just one of the main titles about sharks in the UK. So as you can see, fears of a monster great white shark in the UK waters after half-eaten dolphin. We're going to see these half-eaten dolphins in a second. Washed up on family beaches. So you can see also here the use of words. They didn't say like around the coast. No, they used the word family beaches, okay? So these are the half-eaten dolphins. I presume that even if you're not a marine biologist, you can imagine that if there was a white shark around, probably you wouldn't find the animals in this condition, okay? And if you continue to read through the article, you can see that he interviewed the project manager of the Institute of Zoology, and he said that the damage was consistent to be more likely to be associated with seal predation. It doesn't present any pathology that would conclude is consistent with white shark predation. So basically, white sharks are not even a possibility here, okay? But that doesn't matter, because in the title, there's a great white shark in the UK and looking to kill all our families. So that's the message that we keep in mind, okay? So if we apply the same approach to the more familiar group of primates, it's something like if you read an article like that and say, oh, attack from chimpanzees. Oh, I didn't know the primates were deadly machine. Let's kill them all. Okay, so we have 270 species of primates, including some cute ones, and including humans. But I don't know why there's a different form of perception when we talk about sharks and when we talk about other wild animals, okay? So an interesting thing that you can do is go home and go onto the Florida Museum website, but basically it's an interactive map. You can select the year, you can select the species, and it tells you the real documented unprovoked attacks from sharks to humans. So what you see here, all these red dots are the unprovoked attacks in the past century. So if you select just one ear, and you select, for example, just the great white shark, which is the one that is mostly associated with attacks on humans, you will find that there are about 4 or 5 attacks per year documented and unprovoked. When I say unprovoked, it means not the ones related with the cage diving of sharks. In that situation, the shark is attracted towards the boat. Sometimes, if the bait is not handled properly, the shark can get into the cage, and that can be considered as an attack, but it's not unprovoked. We kind of provoked that attack. So you should be more scary of cows, really. It is estimated that 74 people have been killed in the past 15 years. So yes, cows are more dangerous than sharks. But you don't think about it, do you? And so in this image here, you can see just a representation of the most dangerous animals on the planet. So the first one is the mosquito, mostly linked to the malaria disease. Second, humans. We can talk about these, maybe we can swap these around. And then we have snakes, bugs, and other forms, crocodiles here. Sharks with wolves are on the top here. Less than 10 documented attacks per year. Okay? So when they ask you, are they really so dangerous? No, they're not. Absolutely. So what we have to do as scientists, as passionate about the environment, is to change this perception into this perception. So we have to teach the next generation that sharks are amazing animals. They are unique, they are beautiful. We need to teach them how important they are for the environment and not to be scared of them. So let's see some of these characteristics that are unique for sharks and make them so interesting from a scientific point of view. So the first main difference is the skeleton. Normal fish have a skeleton made up of bones, whereas sharks have a skeleton made up of cartilage. What it means is that they are much more flexible, and that helps a lot during the predation. So when they go after a prey, they can swim and change direction very fast. Their swimming is very agile. But it means also that they are lighter than normal fish of the same size. So they don't need to spend energy to control their buoyancy. What happens with a normal fish is that they have a swim bladder, kind of a balloon inside, and they can control the amount of gas inside this balloon for them to move vertically in the water. But to do that, they have to spend energy. So it's a constant controlling of buoyancy for the normal fish. Whereas sharks don't have to do it because they're lighter. They don't have a swim bladder. They rely only on the oils that are present on the liver. So it's an energy saving for them. We're going to see like how many characteristics they have that allow them to be much more efficient than normal fish. So the first one is the buoyancy. The second one, which is a positive and negative aspect in some cases, is the position of the gills. Sharks have gills that are exposed to the environment. They are not covered by the operculum as the normal fish. So you may have seen when you have the goldfish in your bowl and they go with the operculum like that, they use it to move the water around the gills to breathe. Sharks don't have it. The gills are much wider than the normal fish, but they constantly need to swim, or they need to stay in a place where the water flow is quite strong. But when they do it, they can take the maximum amount of oxygen out of the water. So in terms of oxygenation of the gills, this is absolutely the best strategy. Unfortunately, it's a sensitive spot for them. So during, for example, the final phases of the predation, they may be injured around the gills. And because it's their respiratory tissue, that can cause the death of the animal. So that's the negative aspect of it. Another difference from the normal fish is the scales. So normal fish have a body covered with scales. They help with reducing the dragging into the water, so it improves the swimming. But sharks don't have scales. They have denticles. The chemical structure of these denticles is very similar to the teeth. And they are incredibly strong. I have a video later on, you'll see how strong they are, these denticles. So it's a sort of an armor that they have outside, a sort of an external skeleton that protects them from the environment. Okay? It's not just the protection. The structure, the 3D structure of these denticles allow them to swim in a more efficient way. It has been estimated 6 to 8% less energy than a fish of a similar size. So their swimming is better because of these denticles. But also, these denticles don't allow the settlement of the barnacles and the other parasite on the skin of the shark. Because of this structure that is not flat and it's undulated, so the barnacles and all the other ectoparasites, they can't attach to the skin of the shark. Thanks to these characteristics, there are different studies now around the world, one in the US Navy as well. They're trying to cover the hull of all the military boats and ships with a sort of a tentacle-like structure to reduce the dragging and to prevent the settlement of these barnacles. So that's another interesting difference between the sharks and the other fish. The form of reproduction is also different. Normal fish reproduce through the broadcasting spawning. So they just release the eggs and the sperms in the water and they wait for the fecundation to happen. There are different strategies that they use to optimize the chances. So they synchronize the mating. In some cases, the female goes on the surface just before releasing the eggs and starts to swim in circles. That's a signal for the male. The male comes up to the surface and they release the eggs and the sperms in the same time. But still, all these eggs and sperms are released into the water, so the mortality rate is quite high. Sharks have an internal fertilization. So males that you see over here have 2 adaptations of the pelvic fins, and they use these adaptations to transfer the sperm into the body of the female. They only use one at a time. The presence of 2 is possibly, well, simply because they have 2 fins. That can be a reason, but also can give them more possibilities in terms of mating. Because it's a bit weird, but if you figure 2 sharks trying to mate in the water, it's not that easy. So what happens normally is that the male is quite aggressive and holds the female normally by biting the pectoral fin, and then tries with the use of these 2 adaptations to transfer the sperm into the female. If you think this is rough, it's not the end. In some species, they have some hooks at the top of these adaptations. So when they get inside the body of the female, they are sure that the female can't escape from the copulation. If we analyze that with our perception, it's not very nice. But in terms of nature, that enhances massively the possibility of having a pregnancy for a female. So it's not easy when they swim all across the ocean to find a male of the same species. So when they find, it's absolutely important that they end up with a pregnancy. Another interesting aspect related with the reproduction of shark is the ability of some females to store the sperm after the mating for a certain period of time and delay the fecundation until the environmental conditions are favorable. So basically the female finds a male, they mate, and then the female keeps the sperm active inside her body for a certain amount of time and delay the fertilization of the eggs. So the bamboo sharks here have the record for this. Can you guess how long they keep the sperm active? Normally for humans, it's about 3 days. Okay? Can you guess?
Maybe a couple of months.
Couple of months, you say? A bit more. Anyone else? 2 years? Oh, that's a long time. More. 3 years and a half. 45 months. So that's an incredible ability if you think about finding the animal in an environment that is not very favorable. There are a lot of predators. So the female is able to keep the sperm there and use it when it's the right moment. Okay, so that's quite unique. Another interesting aspect is the possibility of having the polyandry, which means having multiple fathers in the same litter. So for what we said before, the copulation of shark is not very nice. So male and females, they meet. The male normally holds the female, and if there are other males around, what you have multiple mating at the same time, but the female is able to generate pups from different fathers. Again, this is very important because it increases the genetic variability of the next generation. So it's a positive aspect in terms of nature. Probably females are not too happy about that, but in terms of species, that's quite effective. About 85% of all the litters have more than one father. Normally, 2 to 3, 4 different males can generate a pregnancy. But not all the species can do that, so it's interesting. This aspect is very interesting because some scientists thought that all the sharks could do that and all the sharks use this strategy. Whereas they found out that the tiger shark actually lacks of this multiple paternity strategy. Only one pup out of 112 shows signs of multiple paternity. That shows how important is scientific research and how important it is to know the biology of each species, because if you try to protect a species, maybe you're using a strategy that is not suitable for another one. Even if they are similar in size, they eat similar things, okay, but the biology can be completely different. So this is an interesting aspect to remember when we talk about the importance of science and scientific research. And finally, females may reproduce without males. Okay, so even if this can sound like an interesting strategy, it's actually an extreme response to a low number of individuals in a population. So if a female is not able to find a suitable partner, they can clone themselves and give birth to 3 pups, like in this case, with exactly the same genetic material as the mother. So only few species, apart from the shark, other few species can do this. It's a tentative of survival, if you want, of keeping the numbers of a population quite high, but the negative aspect is that there is no genetic variability. So the following generation is exactly the same as the previous one, so that can be sensitive to environmental stress, for example, or other diseases. So let's finish with the reproduction, okay? And let's move to the development. So after the fecundation of the egg, normal fish larvae go through different metamorphoses. And they change the shape, they change the size, and they change what they eat. So that means that they have to find the right environment for that specific stage of life. So the first one may be coastal. The second one may be a little bit far away from the coast. The third one can be like in the deep sea. So they have to change the environment in the different stages of life. Sharks don't have this problem. They go through the direct development. So just after the fertilization, they start to develop with the same shape of an adult, okay? And just a minute after they are born, they start to be predators. Predators. So what makes these animals so efficient in their predatory activity? Well, a combination of everything that we saw before, but surely the senses. So sharks have an incredible sensory system. Normally they can detect the prey with the smell or the hearing quite far away. It says 100 meters, but probably it's more than this. Then you have the vision, so they can see where the prey is. And then they have this extra sense, which is the electroreception. So they're able to sense the electromagnetic fields generated by the contraction of the muscles of the prey. So we're going to see in a second what it means. Okay, this is just an opportunity for me to show off that I took this photo. No, I wanted to show how amazing they are as predators. So this was taken in South Africa, and there was me holding the other side of this rope. So what they did, basically, what you do normally to attract the sharks towards the boat, you start to put like blood and rotten fish into the water, and they smell it, they start to they start to come close to the boat, and then they try to find the prey. So our aim there was to keep the tuna head in the water till the very second. When the shark went for the bait, you had to take out the tuna head so you can take a nice photo of the dorsal fin, and then you can recognize the individual, Jack from James from John, okay? The shark was faster than me in this situation, as you can see. Basically, there are a couple of things that I wanted to show you. So that's their nose. So you have a current of water going from one side to another. So a constant flow of water that allows them to detect very low concentrations of molecules. They In this case, they close their eyes with a specific lid to protect the eyes during the final phases of the attack. The electromagnetic sensors are just around here, because again, during the final phase of the attack, they don't see the prey. So they have to have a sense that allows them to follow the prey in the final phase. So let's talk about the smell of sharks. You hear these legends about, oh, you know, it's just a drop of water, a drop of blood in the water, and they can sense it. Is it true? Not true? What do you think? Yeah?
It's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
That their sense of smell, apparently they can smell it from over a kilometre away.
Mm-hmm. Would you swim in the ocean if you had like a wound, if you know that there are sharks around?
No.
That's very wise. Well done.
They know where a weak spot is. They're hyper intelligent when they want to be.
Very nice answer. Well done. Deserves an applause. Well done. Well done. So yes, you are right. It's different for different species. It's quite difficult to measure because, you know, the ocean is quite open. But a group of scientists tried to answer this question in 2009. So they created these solutions of water, and they put in some amino acids, which are basically the building blocks of proteins. And the proteins are found in the blood, in the urines, and in different body fluids. So they diluted these solutions a lot, and they saw if they could see any response from the shark. In this case, it was a hammerhead shark. So you read the paper and you say, ooh, they found a response in the sub-nanomolar range. And I say, what does that mean? So you see a figure, you know it's very low concentration, but you can't really figure out how low is that concentration. So I wanted to do some maths around it, and I calculated that if you put together 400 swimming pools and you dilute 1 gram of amino acid in 400 swimming pools, sharks are able to detect it. So, yes, very good smell. You're right, don't swim with the sharks if you have a wound. So yes, that's an amazing result. I mean, also the researchers themselves couldn't believe it. But yes, that's the sensitivity of the sharks. And yes, again, just to show you the final phases of a real attack, as you can see, the eyes are facing backwards, the mouth is completely open, so the shark can't see the prey. So thanks to these electrosensors that they have around the mouth, they are able to sense the electromagnetic fields generated by, as I said, any muscle contraction in the water. It's interesting to notice that some scientists are using this ability to try to reduce the bycatch of sharks. So what they're trying to do is to fit different electromagnetic fields on the hooks in the long life fishery. That's where basically normally sharks are bycaught. So fishermen try to catch tuna, swordfish, and big animals like that, but accidentally they fish the sharks as well. So by fitting the hooks with these devices, only the sharks can sense them. So it doesn't affect the other fisheries, so the fishermen are happy. And they have been proven to reduce the mortality of bycatch roughly 80 to 90%. So that's a very positive result. The difficulty is to convince fishermen to spend money and fit these on their hooks. That's a whole different story. Finally, they have a final sense that is quite interesting when we consider the attacks towards humans. It's basically the presence of taste buds in the mouth. So after the first bite, we're talking about the top predators, the big sharks. After the first bite, they are able to sense the the amount of fat that is present in the prey. So they can kind of estimate if it's worth going after that prey or not, if the energy that they can take from that prey is enough to justify a predation activity. So when the attack is concentrated towards humans, normally they don't pursue with the attack. Normally they just give a bite and then release the human. The problem is that in some cases that bite can, cut off a leg or an arm. So that's if you want, it's not like a primary mortality related with the attack, but in most cases, almost all the cases, the attack is never finished. The sharks don't eat humans. Okay, we're not their prey, and when that happens, it's just a mistake. So, before I let you go to the tea, I just wanted to mention another thing, the importance of sharks and other top predators in controlling the balance of the ecosystem. So, they studied in different scenarios. This was the only real case scenario that I found, where they studied the abundance of different species when you have a massive reduction of sharks in the ecosystem. And they found out that basically there was a complete change in the ecosystem in terms of species abundance. So we can see that from 1958 to 1976 there was an increase of small sharks. After the 77 to 2003 there was a decrease in this population. Also this one, like some species of normal fish, you can see that there was a decrease before, and then they removed the sharks, and then you had an increase in the species. So the message behind this slide is that sharks control the abundance of the different species that they have in the ocean. So yes, they control the balance of the ecosystem, but what does that mean, really? So I've prepared an experiment that, if it works, should be able to show us what I mean. So I need 10 volunteers. Yes, of course, that's one. Come on stage. 2, yes, thank you. I know some of you in the audience, so if I don't get to 10, thank you. 3, 4, 5, thank you. 6, yeah, you coming? No? Another one? Yes, yes, thank you. How many go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Matt, come on. Thank you.
Where do I stand?
Oh, just pick up one species. For the ones who go here, please don't fall off the stage. Okay? So you'll be the CEO. Okay? Under your sign, you can put your sign on yourself. Just wear it like that. Thank you. You go with a small fish, Matt. Thank you. And then you will find, do I need 2 more? Yeah. You will find, no, don't lift it now. Okay? You will find like a group of lines, okay, under your sign. So you can pick up this one. Don't lift it yet. You hold this one, whole thing there. Lana, thank you very much. Be the CEO. And this one here. So you can wear, you will be the benthic fish. Thank you very much. And you hold this one. Okay. Don't lift it yet. Let's see if it works.
Fingers crossed.
Where is, oh. Okay, here we are. Okay. So slowly, let's lift the whole thing. Yeah, it kind of works. Okay. So in my mind, it was a bit better than this, okay? By moving a little bit, can you try to, like, extend? Yeah, perfect. Okay, don't fall off the stage. Thank you. Okay, so probably you don't see them from down there, but each one of these nice volunteers represent a different species. So what I was trying to do here is to reproduce the trophic chain in the water. So everyone is connected in a way or another. So we got seals, And the prey of seals are the small fish. Then we got the big sharks over there. Oh, you went for the big sharks straight away. And they predate like the big animals, the big fish. And so it's all connected, okay? So when everything works well, can you just pull it a little bit? Okay. When everything works well, that's the balance of the ecosystem. Yeah. So, where is the zooplankton? Oh, that's the zooplankton. Oh no! Okay. Yes, this is not tight enough. Okay. Can you hold this one a little bit? Perfect. Yes, that one.
Life depends on it.
Okay. Okay, that should. All right. So when the zooplankton goes down, so the small animals go down. Okay. Oh, it doesn't work as planned. But the idea was that when the small animals, let's see if it stays here.
Should we just hold it?
No, it's okay. I hold it. Okay. When the zooplankton goes down, so can you go down a little bit on your knees? Thank you very much. All the other species have to change a little bit to just maintain the balance of the ecosystem, okay? But when the big sharks go down, it brings down all the other species, okay? So that's basically the role of the top predators in the marine environment. While all the other species decline in terms of numbers, the other ones can kind of cope with maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. But when a top predator goes down, it brings down the entire trophic chain. So that was the plan. Probably we didn't have enough space. Yeah, probably. yeah, you can stand now. Thank you very much for your help. Okay, you can put everything down. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you can keep that one. Yes, why not? Okay, so sharks, like other animals, are very important for the balance of all the species in the oceans, not just the sharks. So that's why scientists are trying to protect them as much as they can. Because if you remove a top predator from the environment, all the other species will be affected massively. Okay, that's the end of the first part, and I leave it here. So welcome back after the tea. So I just want to talk about the UK Blue Shark project that I started about 3 years ago. So in the first part of this presentation, I will tell you the reasons why I've decided to study the blue sharks. And then I'll show you some video clips about the sampling that I tried to do. So blue sharks are one of the main bycatch species in the Atlantic. So what we saw before, remember, the long live fishery. So fishermen go out, try to catch big fish, and accidentally they catch sharks. It's not the only reason. Unfortunately, they're one of the main species for the shark fin market. They fish blue sharks all around the world, and then the fins are sent to Asia normally. So the official figures say that there are about 37,000 tons fished, animal fished in 2010, but that reached about 60,000 tons in 2015. So something like before, you see the number, you know it's a lot, but can you figure out how much is 60,000 tons? Oh, yeah, sure you can.
1,000 times 60,000.
Yeah?
Be approximately 6 million or something.
6 million or something? 6 million of what?
100,000.
Thousands? Can you tell me something that weighs roughly that weight?
Probably
Well, I looked online, I tell you this secret, and the steel used in Wembley Stadium is 20,000 tons. So every year, just in the Atlantic, the equivalent of 3 Wembley Stadiums are fished, just in the Atlantic. And that's just the blue sharks. So that's quite a lot of animals, if you think about it. The problem with these species is that they overlap massively with the fishing area. So in this study that just got published this year, they tagged 11 species of sharks. They deployed about 1,800 satellite tags, and they followed the movement of the sharks around the world. And they found out that basically there was an important overlapping between the presence of the sharks and the presence of the fishing industry. So these are the hot spots. These are the hot spots where the overlapping was higher. The blue dots are the occasions where they actually fished the shark that was tagged before by the fishermen. So you can see how intense is in the whole North Atlantic here. And unfortunately, they found out that the blue sharks, are the species that overlaps the most with the fishing industry. About 49%. That's the average overlap per month. So that means that every time that the blue shark is going out for feeding, 50% of the time there are some fishing vessels around. So the risk of that shark to be caught are quite high. Okay, and here you can see the areas where these can happen the most. So around the west coast of France, southwest of the UK, just outside Gibraltar, and just off Africa. So this intense fishing activity brought to a massive decline of the spawning stock fecundity. So this is a measurement basically based on the number of pregnant female sharks or males that are ready to fecundate. So you can see the trend here. That's 1971, and that's 2013. So there was a drastic decrease in the animals that were able to reproduce in the North Atlantic. And please remember that these are the official figures from ICCAT, which is a fishery management organization. So we can add an extra, say, 20 to 30% to these figures. So blue sharks are considered quite prolific. They give birth to about 35 to 50 young. The gestation is about a year, roughly. The female, as we saw before, is able to store the sperm for a delayed fertilization up to 12 months. And there's a high incidence of multiple paternity. This is the reason why, so far, there hasn't been any protection of blue sharks in the Atlantic. So, because they were quite prolific and the numbers are very high, they always fished loads of sharks, of blue sharks in the Atlantic, so they didn't put in place any protection till this year. Yay! So finally, in November, they had a meeting, the ICCAT, that association that I was saying before, and they set some catch limit for the blue sharks in the North Atlantic and in the South Atlantic. So it's a positive news. Okay, for the first time we have some limits. Yeah, the limits are quite relaxed. So it's 39,000 tons in the North Atlantic, 29,000 tons in the South Atlantic. So if you put them together, there are roughly 70,000 tons of blue sharks in the Atlantic per year. So the limits are not really, stringent, if you want. But at least it's a first step, okay? Up till this year, there was no limit whatsoever. So because they are top predators, as we said before, they control the whole trophic chain that they have below them. So this paper really was was the one that made me think about studying the blue sharks in the UK. So what they did was to sacrifice, unfortunately, 20 animals. So they went to Portugal, I think it was. Yes, in Portugal. They fished 20 or 25 animals, and they just measured the contaminants that they had inside, and they measured the health of these animals. They found out that most of the contaminants were very abundant in the flesh of the blue sharks, in particular the mercury, way above the limit set by the European Commission for human consumption. And this happens in most cases with mercury and with the top predators. That's why if you go on the NHS website, for example, you find clearly that sharks are among the species that needs to be avoided during pregnancy or breastfeeding, because they are at the top of the trophic chain. They bioaccumulate a lot of contaminants. So just wanted to show you in a simplified way what it means bioaccumulation. So imagine that we have these nice shrimps here, and they are the base of our trophic chain. Each one of them has one molecule of contaminant. Then we have some sardines coming, and each of them eats 3 shrimps. So now in the sardines we have 3 molecules of contaminants in each one of them. Then we have mackerels, and they come, they eat each one of them 3 sardines, and so forth. So you can see a building up of contaminants in the top predators. And the more steps you have, the sharper is the accumulation of contaminants. Okay, so this is a simplified version, of course. There are also some detoxifying mechanisms that different species have. There are contaminants, they accumulate more than others. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated, but just to give you an idea, any top predator really accumulates a lot of contaminants. So blue sharks in that paper that we saw before were used as a sort of indicator, environmental indicator of the status of the ocean. So if we find high concentration of contaminants, the whole environment is contaminated. If we find low concentration of contaminants, the environment is not too concentrated. That was the idea behind it. And then I looked at the conservation status of blue sharks in the Mediterranean, and they are critically endangered. And this is the category just before extinct in the wild. The reasons why they are critically endangered in the Med is because of the overfishing, and it's because of the pollution of the Mediterranean Sea. In a lot of situations, the Mediterranean Sea is used as a sort of a small-scale laboratory of what can happen in the big ocean. So now, worldwide, blue sharks are categorized as near threatened. But if we take the example of the Mediterranean Sea, this can happen in the whole world. Okay? So I felt like I wanted to try to do something to protect the sharks. So building on that paper that we saw before, I just wanted to investigate the presence of the blue sharks around the southwest of the UK. They come here every summer for feeding just after the reproduction. There is a nursery area in the center of the Atlantic, and then the female comes towards the southwest of the UK. Males travel south towards Brazil, so they kind of separate. But every summer we find a lot of females and juveniles in the southwest of the UK. And also I wanted to assess the health of these populations. So the first thing was trying to involve as much as possible all the people working in the sea. So I wanted to create a database of photo identification of dorsal fin. Basically, with some software, you can take a photo of the dorsal fin and then you can assign a name to that specific individual. The idea was to approach the anglers. They fish loads of blue sharks for sport. They're not doing anything illegal. They can do it. It's not regulated, so it's totally fine. They just take the shark out of the water, take a nice photo, and then they release the shark back to the sea. So my idea was, well, while you are fishing the shark, at least send me the photo of the dorsal fin, so we can, collaborate together. And thanks to this idea, we got in contact with an angler in the Isle of Scilly, and he's sending us quite a lot of photos, and we started to create a database online. Then I wanted to study the biomarkers of the genetic damage. Means basically, by extracting the DNA from the tissue of the shark, you can see if the DNA is strong, is functioning, or if the DNA is damaged. What parts of DNA are red? Like some parts of the DNA are red only if the animal is stressed or if it's going through some diseases. So these are type of information that you can get from the tissues. I wanted to study the genetics of populations of the blue sharks in the Atlantic. So basically, is there just one big population of blue shark in the Atlantic, or can we identify some subpopulations feeding in different areas? And that links to the next one, which is basically if we find different subpopulations, do they have different contamination levels? So we can use them, as we saw before, as indicators of the health of the ecosystem. And finally, we can also study on what trophic level they are feeding. So are the blue sharks feeding on the big fish, or are they feeding on the small fish? Are they feeding close to the shore, to the coast, not the shore, close to the coast, or in the open ocean? And again, if we are able to identify different subpopulations of blue sharks, we can see each one of these populations, where that population is feeding, on what trophic level, and how many contaminants they have, and how healthy they are. So how to do that? Well, so far, scientific research on sharks in general has been based on two methods. One was sacrificing the animals. So you go out, you fish the animal, you kill the animal, you take your samples, and you do your analysis. The other one was buying the animals from fishermen. So still, you are feeding that industry that you're trying to regulate, okay? So I started to think what alternative could be to reduce the stress on the animal. So my idea was to collect a skin biopsy from the dorsal area of the animal. So just again, just a representation. Below this line, you have the ventral cavity with all the organs of the animals. Above that line, you have just muscles. There's nothing lethal if you collect your sample from there, okay? So my idea was to attract the sharks towards the boat. No fishing sharks, just attract them, okay? So putting down baits, rotten fish, smelly fish, or very smelly fish. And then when they are close to the boat, collect a skin biopsy with a pole, with a modified tip. The tip has a stopper, so it can't penetrate too deep into the animal. And the amount of tissue that I'm planning to collect is the size of half a pinky. So that amount of tissue, which is thought to be not dangerous for the animal. Then after I collect this amount of tissue, I will divide it in 4 pieces. Each one will be sent to different laboratories around the UK and Europe for the different analysis. So the idea is to find the least invasive technique to collect some information from the sharks without killing the animal, without fishing the animal, and without feeding the fishing industry of blue sharks. And with just that little bit of tissue, we can get a huge variety of information about the population of the Atlantic. So the last analysis that I told you about, the one about the trophic level and how close to the coast they live, is not as accurate as if you use the satellite tags. But there are two main reasons why I didn't decide to use the satellite tags in my study. One was the cost. One satellite tags, especially if you go for the reduced size, can cost up to £3,000 to £4,000. And you risk to lose it as well. So I said, no, maybe not. The second reason is that the satellite tag can cause a damage, an important damage to the dorsal fin of the sharks. So what you see here is a white shark. So the dorsal fin big, okay, we're talking about a dorsal fin that is roughly that big. And this satellite tag here was attached on the animal 3 months before this photo was taken. So you can clearly see the open wounds here. You see them better in this photo, and you see them even better here. So what they have to do when they attach a satellite tag is to drill through the dorsal fin, fix with 2 to 4 screws the satellite tag that is on the other side of the fin. So every time that the animal goes on the surface, they can send an information to the satellite, and they can track the movements. I can see the point of this technique. A lot of information that we have today about the movement of the blue sharks and other species have been obtained with this technique. So the information that you can get are really invaluable. Okay, you can understand why you have females here, where the males are going, the overlapping between the fishing ground, remember that one? Overlapping between fishing ground and the presence of sharks. You can't get that level of detail without the satellite tagging. But with this analysis, the stable isotope analysis, you can identify an area where probably the shark was when it was feeding the last time. So you can kind of track the movements of the blue sharks. Not with the same level of detail, but you don't cause any extra damage to the dorsal fin that is absolutely important for the swimming of these animals. So this is the study area. So mainly the study area. Then I tried different locations, didn't work very well. This is probably the best one. And that was my office during the sampling. Yeah. So it's just an excuse to go out on a boat one day, really. And as you can see, the sharks are free swimming, no hooks used. We just attach a bait to a rope without any hook, and we start to throw in the water smelly fish, rotten fish, blood from fish and everything. And when the sharks start to arrive, you have to play with them like you play with your cat, basically. Try to come close, come close, come close. And when they are close to the boat, you try to have the right angle because you want to make sure to collect the skin biopsy from the area where you can take it, so avoiding the belly and the dorsal fin. And then you collect your sample. So that's the final moment just before the sampling. Okay, now I have a video of an attempted sampling. So I didn't know if I wanted to put it or not because it seems like a very strong hit that I give to the shark. It was very strong, very, very strong. Just consider that I didn't manage to get through the skin. So at the end of this clip, you will see the shark just swimming away and then coming back for the bait in another 10 seconds. So, but the idea of the sampling is the one that you will see here, okay? Let's see if it works. there was a lot of swearing there, as you can imagine. But yeah, that's the shark, and Carl, you can confirm they came back many times after many attempts of stabbing. All the swearing as well, yes, exactly. So the reason why I didn't manage to go through the skin is partially because of the tentacles that we saw before, but also because 95% of the sharks that we have here are females, and females have a thicker skin than males. So that's female and that's male, because they have to cope with the mating. What we said before, the male starts to bite the female, and the female has to cope with this biting. So the skin is very, very tough. And these are the type of wounds that they cause each other during the mating. So quite deep, and the recovery ability of sharks is impressive. The one that you see here, it's a scar caused by a fishing line that was wrapped around the shark, and the shark has like an open wound roughly a month before they took this picture. So that's why I'm considering the skin biopsy that I'm taking basically harmless for the animals, because they will recover very fast from that type of damage. So to conclude, was it a success? Yes and no. No, because till now I spent all the money for the equipment and the sampling and didn't get any sample yet. So the first year the tips didn't work, then I came back, modified the tips. Second year didn't work again, but they managed to go through the skin this time. The only problem was that they couldn't hold the tissue inside. So yeah, unfortunately there was a shark swimming with a little bit of flesh hanging out of the side, but that wasn't in my tips, unfortunately. And last year I didn't find any shark during the sampling days. Apparently I've asked around to different people working with blue sharks. It was like the worst year in terms of numbers of blue sharks in the coastal waters. So that's the 3 years of sampling. Then I had to justify with the funding body why I spent all the money and I didn't get any sample. And again, that wasn't very easy. And my ego as a scientist, unfortunately, couldn't be satisfied, so I had to postpone my scientific breakthrough. But apart from that, it was a success because I've collaborated with a huge variety of people. I estimated that I got in contact with about 1,000 people. So volunteers who came on board with me, students who came on board with me, people who helped me with the fundraising, just contacting me for asking me questions about blue sharks. So that was an amazing result, and I didn't expect that interest from the general public. So that was definitely a success. I published an article on a website, and I started a photo identification database. So if you go online on the ukblueshark.com, you will find a series of dorsal fins. You can click and they give you some information about the location where that shark was caught and the name of the shark. I hosted on board activists from fin fighters to make a documentary about the blue sharks and the shark fin trade. So that was an interesting collaboration. There was an article published on the BBC Wildlife magazine about the project, and that reached a wide public. So that was another very positive success. And I learned a lot from my experience, modified the tips, and now I'm ready to go again. I have to say this project wouldn't be possible without the support of different funding bodies. So first of all, the Shark Foundation in Switzerland. I was shocked to hear that there is a Shark Foundation in Switzerland. I saw the guy at a conference and he said, yeah, I know, I don't have any oceans in Switzerland, but we have money. And I said, I like you. So they kindly decided to support the project, and that was very, very generous of them. Then we started a crowdfunding campaign and we raised about £1,000. And last year, we got the support of all the people who donated in the memory of Rebecca Weller, who was an amazing marine biologist who took part to the sampling the year before. And so, yeah, it's not just about the science that is behind the project, but it's the whole experience. So it's the preparation of the sampling tips, it's the preparation of the crowdfunding campaign, getting in contact with people, like I'm doing tonight, talking about sharks, increasing the awareness, hosting on board students, volunteers, and anyone who wants to join me. And yeah, so that was the real result of this project. I had a video here, but unfortunately we don't have internet, so I can't show you the video. Maybe.
Put it on your Facebook?
Yes, I can put it on my Facebook, so we can share it through your websites too. And that's it. So thank you very much for coming here tonight. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.